Hey, it's Joe West from Westbourne with
Mike Shimshack.
Today, Greg Joseph from the Clarks is with us. Welcome, Greg.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
I'm great. Greg is in the rock band The Clarks, famous, legendary band that has really just done some spectacular things. Not only have they just been great as a rock band, traveling around and making everybody smile with their music for 30 years, they've been doing it at a level that undoubtedly one of the most successful rock bands in a unique way. Most people blow their money in the music business. The Clarks do not do that. They form a corporation, put everybody on medical, and then send W-2s out the end of the year. So very unique. But the band as a whole has had 11, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, 11 studio albums. It was signed to MCA Records as well as Razor and Tie. I can remember a great song. Me and Jerry Goldenson were just listening to a bunch of Clark's stuff over the weekend. That was the theme for the Anna Nicole Smith. Was that who it was, Anna Nicole Smith?
Yeah, Anna Nicole Smith show. And
what a great song that is, by the way.
Little camera adjustment here just so I look my prettiest for everybody. We got an invitation from the Anna Nicole Smith show, of all places, to have our song Better Off Without You appear in the end credits. And when we first get it, you get something like that and you kind of look at it like, oh my God, what are we doing on a show like that? But it's a break, and you got to take the breaks where they come. And the ironic thing about that, a quick story before you move on to the next question. We were in the tour bus when the show first aired, first episode, and we're all gathered around the TV set that is on the bus, all watching. We suffer through 29 minutes of Anna Nicole whining and moaning on the show. And we get to the end and the show runs long. They never play the end credits and they never play our music at the end of the first episode.
It sucks.
Dude, I will tell you that song, as soon as it came on, Jerry Goldenson, who's been on the podcast, was up in Pittsburgh recently and was hanging out with Dave, your drummer from the Clarks. They're good buds. And so he was just, me and him were reminiscing about Pittsburgh and the Clarks. And we start listening as we're smoking these cigars. We start listening through all your catalog. And that song came on, and it was just like, that was a good example of a hit song. It was like, as soon as I heard it, I was like, holy cow, that's a hit song. And you can't say like, oh, it's the guitar lick. Oh, it's this. It's just like, it comes on. You're like, whatever you're doing, you look at the speakers and you say, that's a hit song. And I thought that song was just a monstrous song. It could have been a top 10 song. Well, anyhow, let's real quickly, let's you're from Pittsburgh. The band grew up in Pittsburgh, is legendary in Pittsburgh. I'm also from Pittsburgh. Mike's from Rochester, New York, and his band. Didn't you play with the Clarks, Mikey?
We opened for the Clarks a bunch of times. Yeah, we did at Nick's Fat City. I remember the first time rolling into Pittsburgh, first time we ever played, we were opening for the Clarks in Nick's Fat City. I remember this line like for blocks. We're like, what's this for? And we showed up. People were out at like 5 o'clock at night lining up to see the Clarks. Like, whoa, man, we're in all right, hang on. Yeah. Do you remember
anybody?
Greg, do you remember a band? Greg, do you remember a band called Johnny Vegas from a long time ago?
Yeah.
That was us. That was my band.
And we probably played with you guys.
Probably in Buffalo, maybe. We did well in Buffalo, so maybe that was possible.
Buffalo. We probably played at Nietzsche's.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And there was a place was Rochester, the place where they had that big cavernous club where the floor fell in at one point?
Yeah, the Water Street Music Hall.
Water Street Music Hall.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. We gigged together. Yeah, it was fun. It was great. You guys are incredible, though, man.
Everybody knows who's ever been in a band that your expectation is that you're going to show up somewhere and people are there to listen. But it's if you've ever played in a band, that's not the way it goes. But for some reason, and you correct us if we're wrong, the Clarks have this thing that's like every time they played, it was lines around the block. Was it that way when you first started? When did that become a thing?
No. We started in the fraternities and on campus at the college that we attended in Indiana, Pennsylvania, called Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Hey, we started like anybody else. We were starting out playing cover tunes, but the goal was to to start playing original material. We moved down to Pittsburgh and realized that this is what we wanted to do for real. We all started with day jobs. We did small clubs and just did our opening slots for no money. Just tried to make friends in the community. And you get a little bit of airplay, and this happens and that happens in a rock competition, and all of a sudden we're on the biggest radio stations in Pittsburgh. And that's when those types of things happen, when you show up and do the radio gigs. And
how long in was that?
Heck, that's got to be I would say from on our second record. So that was probably about after 3, 4, 5 years.
Now, the band in and of itself is fascinating enough. You're one of the biggest, most successful, self-sustaining rock bands, that I can think of. On a national level, you guys have had big success. When did you guys start thinking like, hey, we're not going to blow our money like the rest of the world? It's like every rock band has the same problem, which is they spend all the CD money on gas on the way home, and all the T-shirt money.
Right.
Like, when did that start? Was there an actual demarcation between, hey, we need to get our shit together? What's the story?
Never a demarcation. It started from the very beginning. When we first made our first handful of cash, it was like, okay, what do we do with it now? And up at when we were at the university, we would take the money that we made from Saturday night and go up on Sunday morning and grab a pizza and talk about the show. So that was band funded. But whatever was left over in that pot went into a bank account. And we said, look, our bigger goal is to put together a record. And the next big goal was, let's get a van and travel. And the next big goal is, whatever it was after that. That was the fun part of it, is that we all were either in school or had day jobs that we didn't need the money for ourselves. And I think that's where a lot of the younger bands and the bands that weren't successful, that's how they kind of compromised themselves, is they didn't plan for the future. They planned for spending that money every day. And I think that creates tension in a band.
So tell me, what this looks like. The Clarks are a self-sustaining rock band where the guys don't have other jobs unless they want them. I know Dave has the train shop, but in its current state, you guys are able to be fully funded for your yearly income through the band, all done as a corporation with a W-2, not a 1099 independent contractor, with a W-2. Right. And do you guys have benefits?
At one point we did.
Do you have...
when we, back in the day when you could actually sell music on a disc, we were selling, on our first record, which was vinyl, we sold about 1,000 vinyl copies, reissued it as a CD, and then sold about 4,000, 5,000 copies of that. Next couple of CDs, it went from 10,000, 12,000, 20,000. We probably sold 40 or 50,000 independent copies of our third or fourth CD. So, do that math. Back in that day at selling, say, even 30,000 and making a profit of $8 a disc, that's some good coin back then. And we were, that's when we started to get into, okay, well, what's the next step with our money? And that next step is, well, let's put something away in a 401k retirement plan. So
that's so weird to me to have a rock band from Pittsburgh thinking like that.
It's incredible.
There was enough money that we were able to pay ourselves and put some money away. And you think back to the jobs you had early on and you think, boy, if I would have just saved that money, I'd have some money now. We did it.
I've always been afraid of that. Through all the success, the one thing that has kept me saving my money is the fear that I'll look back and say that. And I think it's not this noble thing that someone's so smart sometimes that they save money. It's really that they are just deathly afraid to look back and say, where is it? What happened? You guys didn't do that. And it's like, you didn't have management that encouraged you to do it. It was actually the band.
Yeah, it was the band. And then, a couple of years later, we got to a place where we could go out to the labels and shop the band. And that's when we got management. And then, they came up with some great ideas. We had an attorney that worked with us during those years. And, they all helped out. But I think it's our own financial management amongst ourselves. I think all of our fathers were wise men, and they came from Depression era and shortly after Depression era. That, you know, that was kind of what you were expected to do as a son, because they were the ones saying, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. You know, Rob's dad helped us pay for our first van, and he had faith that we would pay him the money back, and we did. So those guys, you know, our dads really helped out in our progress.
Well, not to mention that the band has remained the same since its inception in 1986. Same four dudes.
Same four guys for 35 years.
And that's really pulling something off. I mean, especially when you get to the point where you're having to support the touring schedule to maintain the level of intensity. You guys have had high levels where you had to go out there and be together for a long time on the road, and you guys someone didn't try to seize the power or do that ugly thing where it's like lead singeritis. You know, you guys were able to keep that together. That's another thing that's very admirable. When I watch the Rush documentary, I love that about those guys, that they genuinely seem to care for one another, and you guys seem to have that.
Yeah, and the Chicago documentary was also the same way, where those guys were real complimentary of each other so many years later. And I kind of smiled when I watched that documentary, because we did the same thing. We realized really early on that when we started filling out BMI forms and copyright forms that, yes, somebody wrote the song, but without the band promoting the song, that individual person didn't have the firepower to get any revenue out of the song. So it goes hand in hand, and we sat down one day and came up with a complex formula of how we split royalties. And I'll get into that just briefly. We decided that each person gets 20%. Drummer gets 20, bass player, guitar player, vocalist gets 20%. And then we split the last 20% as to who the lyricist was and who the person who writes the music was. And you get the extra 20% for being that person.
Huh.
So that's
a great idea. Great idea.
That you didn't get into that situation where one guy takes everything and then you have three guys who are, upset over that for years and years.
Well, here's the greater question is, once you do start to earn money, it's really cool that whoever it was that was the actual writer, that they still were okay with it, because so many people will sign a piece of paper saying, hey, this is how it's going to go, and then the record goes on and is a hit. Right. And then everyone's like, well, wait a minute, that earned $1 million. I could have kept all that $1 million. Right. And then they want to rethink the terms. But it's really cool that you guys have been able to sustain this, not only through the concept of like, hey, this is the people we want to be and the band we want to be, because people have tried what you guys are doing and have failed at it. It just goes to show you got to follow through with it and really want it to work. And it sounds like you guys have been able to do that, which is another, just like, the rest of the world is doing it and failing, and you guys have somehow figured out a way to do it and be the one shining example of where it succeeds. And that's why you've been around for 35 years.
Here's Amendment A to what you just said, that, when you get more success and the person who writes the song feels they aren't getting enough, we realized that the songs were coming in as full ideas at one point from one of two people, either myself or Scott, the lead singer. So then we took the publishing end, which was split evenly between four people. And we said, okay, whoever writes, as an additional incentive to keep writing, we gave the pub end to the individual that wrote that song. So it went to my publishing company, or it went to Scott's publishing company.
Genius.
If Rob wrote a song, it went to Rob's publishing company. So you get the extra little 50% bump for being
it's actually
creative.
a huge bonus.
Yeah,
that's incredible. And so now that you guys have got a successful band that's self-sustaining, and also your road crew is on salary, aren't they? Is that incorrect?
Not full salary. They're a per show.
Okay, because I thought Jerry was talking to me. I thought that some of the guys on your crew were actually W-2 employees. Not the case?
Well, yeah, there's one guy, John, that works with us. He's full-time. He's sort of road manager, merchandise manager guy. So, yeah, I don't consider him necessarily road crew. The two road guys are per show guys.
Got it.
But our tour manager is also on salary, yeah.
See, that's a pretty incredible thing, because you think of guys leaving town on buses on Thursday in Nashville, coming back Sunday, and tour managers that have been with guys with big marquee names, and they're not. This is still a 1099 world. You know, it's pretty incredible that you guys are able to do that. It's just unheard of. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone else doing it. Mike, have you?
I'm surprised you say that.
Yeah, no independent bands that I know have this together. I know my band didn't. I can tell you that much. Yeah.
Here's
are you guys still? Obviously, coronavirus aside, previous to this, are you guys still touring like you used to? You guys toured a lot, or has that slowed down?
We got nothing. You know, you look at. I just got a call. I got 2 text messages yesterday. 2 gigs canceling in August. You know, it's just. The dates are just
but previous to that, were you guys touring as hard as you once were? Have you slowed down a bit? You know, you guys toured hard. You guys toured hard.
Lot. Yeah, and that was when we were on the record labels, those were 150 show to 200 show years, whereas now we're doing about 40, 45 shows a year.
Okay. Still,
it's a lot more selective, and when it's more selective, you make more money than going out to Ottumwa, Iowa, and playing for $50 and turning around and playing in some other small town where you don't have a fan base. So it comes down to playing shows that are money making shows as opposed to the publicity shows.
Gotcha.
Point.
That's interesting that you say that. I want to get into that in a second, but I wanted to let's talk a little bit about the music scene in Pittsburgh in the mid to late 90s. So I left Pittsburgh, I guess I left it somewhere around the mid 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was trying to tell Mike about this, and because he was telling me about the lines around the block when he played with you guys at Nick's Fat City in Pittsburgh on the South Side. And I said, well, there was something going on there. It was the Clarks, Rusted Root, the Gathering Field, Brownie Mary, and is there anyone else I'm missing? You had really, those were the big 4, right?
Those were the big 4, yeah.
There's probably a couple others hanging on there, like Seventh House, who got the Atlantic deal and some other. But all you guys could play on the same Friday night in a secondary market like Pittsburgh, and you would have anywhere from 800 to 1,200 people at each of those shows, same night, going on same time, which is insane.
Yeah, and being friends amongst each other, there were times that we would try to not cannibalize one another's crowd. But, inevitably, we all had to make money, so you had to play on the same nights. But the scene was so healthy back then. There were a number of clubs, big clubs that we could play in. And for whatever reason, at that time, the big radio stations were promoting. There were 2 local entertainment papers that were entertaining. And live local music was a positive thing. Now it struggles with dance music, and it struggles with every other thing that's out there to do on a Friday night. That it's just changed. We did a festival when the Shed Amphitheater opened here in outside of Pittsburgh, about 20 miles outside of Pittsburgh, called Star Lake Amphitheater at the time. They wanted to do a local show, and it was called Surge Fest. And the first year of Surge Fest, Surge was a brief product from Coca-Cola. They put together a local lineup. We headlined, Brownie Mary had headlined, I think, one of the years. Gathering Field was on there. And there were probably about 10 or 15 local bands. And, we sign up for the gig. We're expecting, if, 5,000, 6,000 people will show up throughout the day. There were close to 18,000 people there for a local music.
It's insane.
That's a time and a place.
Right.
That doesn't happen.
And that was more than 1 year, right?
Happened 2 years in a row.
Wow.
And you guys used to get a lot of the radio play. What was the local radio station there? It was a great radio station.
WDVE.
That's it. Yeah. And they used to play your stuff, right? They play all the local bands, correct?
They would.
They did. They put in a great effort in doing local music and getting them into regular rotation, which also then helped with your search for a record label. That when they could, the record labels would check in and say, who are you playing? What's this? And I think actually they would get angry because, here's a playlist with all these national big acts, and one of the spots was being clogged up by a local band. Right. So obviously
it wasn't undeserved though. You would never, when those records came on, they were the biggest records on the station. The Gathering Field, when Lost in America came out, it went to DVE, and they said that was their number one song for 3 months straight. They used to keep track of it with a pad, and they said the check marks would go off the page. So it wasn't like they were, WDV wasn't for, DV was the number 2 or 3 AOR, album-oriented rock station in the country. Big and powerful, big FM station. And when these songs came on, they weren't disappointments. They weren't like, oh, we're going to go ahead and take a break here and do our community PSA and play the local band. When they came on, they were the most popular songs on the station, standing up against Pearl Jam, or, of course it was DV, so it was up against Led Zeppelin and every record from, 1972 through 82, So it was really go ahead.
Oh, and they made it look big. They didn't throw it down as here, like you said, Joe, as a local spotlight moment. It was next to those other songs, so it fit in. So then it gives the band's persona a national feel to it, and the people around here, they dug that. They put the bands up on a far bigger pedestal than I really think I have ever seen in any other city in America.
Who else? Why does Stone Temple Pilots deserve that and not you guys? It's like we all think that people outside of town are huge, and and that we're not as good as them. Right. But the reality is the DVE saw that the stuff was great, and they put it out there, and it did put it, the perception-wise, on the same. But the reality is the Clarks are a band that when you play before them, you get demoralized. Me and Dave Pahanish in band, played in Greensburg somewhere, second floor someplace. Does that make sense, Greensburg?
Oh, yeah.
So we played in Greensburg with you guys, and it was a demoralizing feeling watching the first 8 measures of your set. It was like we were just not on that level. When you guys played and it came through the PA, we were just like, we can't do this with them, and I don't want to play in front of those guys again, and you guys were sweethearts, but it was just from a musical level, you guys really had it together. You were a seasoned rock band.
Yeah, I think we took it seriously amongst ourselves through those years, and quite honestly, we weren't trying to demoralize people. We always came with the sort of the mantra that we're going to help whoever was in our shoes get to the next level, and we always wanted to have and pick our own local openers so that we could help the next generation come about. I think we gave, I don't know how many bands we would have given somewhat of a break, because there were bands that gave us a break all through the years too. And you need that camaraderie in the music community.
Well, Rusted Root was probably the biggest band out of Pittsburgh when they had that $2.5 million on.
Send Me On My Way.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the label. What label were they? Mercury. Were they Mercury?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mercury.
Yeah.
So, but you guys were the turtle. You guys were always just rocking it in selling, in drawing, in playing. And as a consequence, Rusted Root was amazing. But, you guys could play a gig and have 3,500 people show up tomorrow in Pittsburgh, if not 6,500. And it's there's something that happens with the longevity of that. The Clarks have kind of taken the torch that Donnie Iris held, which was like, hey, if Donnie Iris is just kind of like mandatory requirement in Pittsburgh, he is an institution. And the Clarks may be the band that he's sort of passing that off to. It just goes to show you that it's like, yeah, you could jump up and be this national success like Rusted Root and sell 2.5 million copies, but there's a better life out there, arguably a better life to sustain a career, which is you guys have now been able to do 11 records, maintain creative control, and be in a rock band with your buddies from college, and now make a living doing it, live in good houses, and make probably 6-figure incomes from it, and have benefits and retirement. It's just not what we picture from a rock band. it sort of goes against every story that we hear.
Yeah, and I like that long and slow and steady thing because it's kept me out of a day job for the past 30 years. I think we realized that with the record labels, because we were on subsidiaries or smaller labels, that on the one hand, you lose control of decision making and you lose control of a lot of things. To have things in your control is a lot better. And we also realized that, as everybody probably listening knows, is that the record deal can sometimes be construed as a loan at a really horrible interest rate. So who has control of that? We realized that if we're making $6, $7, $8 an album on our own, that's better than taking $100,000 advance and not seeing anything after that. But yet, being on the label legitimized us to a lot of people to be a national or international band that helped the independent side. So they both went hand in hand with one another.
What was that like, going from keeping all the money to then recouping a debt that doesn't ever seem to get recouped? So with MCA.
It was a little frustrating. The MCA thing went by pretty quickly, so we didn't really have a long-term relationship to say, oh, wow, there should be money in the bank. But I do remember getting a statement from Razor and Tie, and knowing it's a statement, I'm opening up and I'm like, oh, I wonder how much we made, this month, or, what's the check they're sending us? And I look at the statement and we were still $300,000 in the hole to them.
Yeah. Oh, Lord.
Well, let's do the math real quick. If you make, what'd you say, 7 or 8 a record you'll make?
On
your
how many
independent stuff?
independent records?
What is that sound? Is that like...
It's not. I'm in North Carolina, sitting in my car in the mountains of North Carolina, and there are acorns or something dropping on my car.
It sounds like people are like...
Sorry, pelting me.
It sounds like it's some sort of like a riot somewhere. People.
No, I'm in
your car.
I'm in literally like in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina, and there's trees everywhere, and it's just like bing. I'm watching them like bounce off the.
You there?
I'm still here.
There you go. All right, sorry about that.
Okay. But so what do you, as an independent artist, you can make what, $7 a CD, $8 on a...
Yeah.
But then you say manufacturing's $1.50, right, with whatever. So let's say you make $6 a CD, right?
Well, even more. You figure you sell the disc for $12.
Okay, so we'll say $7, $8.
So yeah, you're netting about $6, $7 when you take out management.
$7, and let's do some math here, and let's make sure we don't put the decimal in the wrong spot. If you sold 10,000 records, that's $70,000.
70. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm right. So $70,000, and you guys are making 7 times 4, $280,000, $300,000. You go from making $280,000 on an independent release to being $300,000 in debt. How does that work?
I have no idea. I don't know what we paid for.
So here's the dirty trick of the music business. You guys jump in anytime you like. So this is how the record companies work, or used to work at least. They give you a record deal. They advance you some money, and they'd advance you a publishing deal as well. I'm going to mute you, Mike. You can chime in. Unmute yourself. It sounds like you're traveling through the solar system. They would give you an advance of maybe, in the old days, $200,000 to $300,000 to sign as a baby band with them. And you'd also get a publishing gift for about the same amount back in the day. So yeah, about an influx going into the band, depending on who's writing the songs and how you're dispersing that percentages of about $500,000. Usually that goes all to the lead singer who writes the songs, the other $250,000. So the band has the $250,000. And with that, it's like, okay, I don't know if that was considered recording budget or if it was separate, but you have to pay that back via your spread. So they usually give you about a 10 to 12 point deal on a record, which means out of every $10 that they collected, you got about $1. But this debt that you had accumulated with them, the music videos, the recording of the record, the going to radio and taking the people out for dinner and coffee, all the things, all the ancillary things, they could stack up on a long ledger against you, you would pay back not at the full rate. So let's say your band sells 1,000 records, right? And it's $10,000 comes in. Well, you don't get to reduce your debt by 10 grand. You get to reduce it by the 10%. $1,000 comes off of your debt. So you're continually paying down your debt at your rate of royalty, which is traditionally 10%, which eventually in every rock band, every story, it doesn't matter how many times they would show the behind the music. It doesn't matter. Every story is the same. They couldn't get out of debt because as soon as something became a little bit successful, they'd shoot another video. Right. And then they would have to put it in new markets, and there's all these additions, there's buses, there's all these things that would just keep going, tour support. So you end up sort of working for the company store. In every band that I know, and I don't know a lot of people that have like 10 million selling records, but every band that I know, they've never really recouped their record deal. So
no. You
go from being 280 grand cash flow positive, not counting touring revenue, not counting the other things that record companies now participate in, there's royalties, there's publishing, there is merch, and am I missing one? There's the fourth.
Touring.
Touring is the fourth. Now they participate in all those things, and it's like you could have been just on the record side 280 grand to the plus, and now they're telling you you're 300 grand to the negative.
Right.
So there's something really to be said for like, hey, why do we need a major? When do we need a major? Do we ever need a major? Maybe if you're that big regional band like the Clarks and you're saying, you know what, we're going to give the national thing a real go, and we're going to try to get on big radio stations, and we're going to need them for that. That's sort of the way you look at it. But if you look at it like an accountant, I don't think you'd ever go to a record company because no one's ever really recouped at the regular levels. Do you agree with that?
There is an allure that you cannot avoid wanting to be on a label, and that's the barometer of success. And I think everybody jumps into that, and you should one time. You should take a look at that and see what it does for you. And the other positive thing about the record label thing is okay, we still owe Razor and Tie this certain amount of money through the money that comes back to them through record sales, but it is not recoupable. That goes on our account as when royalties come in, that gets paid back, but it doesn't really get paid out of my bank account in any way. We don't owe them anything out of our money. So, it becomes a zero debt once you're dropped from the label for the most part.
Uncollectible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. And is there a scenario in which you would go back to a major at this point in your career?
I think it would have to be a pretty healthy advance and a way for them to get us out on tour and to make a profound difference that we knew was going to be a profound difference from the minute we signed. If I knew that it was just a small advance and there were no promises of getting the band to another label or another level, I don't see the interest in that right now. And based on our age, I don't know that we would get out and do any kind of full tour.
Yeah. But do you don't regret the years?
Not at all. No, I think being on the label, it was fun. It was fun working with the people at the record labels. The folks at Razor and Tie were great. They became friends for a number of years. We put out, I think, 3 projects with them, and they let us have pretty good autonomy with what went on the record. They said, okay, here's your budget, and go to Nashville and do what you want and hand us a record. And when the record came back, they said, we like this, we like this, we like, there was not that, go back and write me 12 new songs, those suck.
Here's the $1 million question for you. Do you still rehearse as a band?
We are getting together on Friday we're starting to put together a new record. What a better time than during COVID when you don't have, right. We're sitting here just sitting in our chairs, twiddling our thumbs. Let's get through this and have a product when we're all free to get back out of the house and go to clubs, and we'll be ready, armed and ready for having a new product out there. But generally, sort of a trick question because before these past few months, we hadn't practiced in, I don't know, sound check.
Most bands that have been together that long that I know don't rehearse. That's why I was asking.
No,
they just they got it down. So
you end up just jumping to the sections where you need to, like, okay, ending the song, bop bop ba da bop bop bop, get a little signature line down, or So let's talk real quick about some of the records. You've worked with a lot of different producers over the year. I can't remember if we turned you guys on to the Clubhouse in Germantown. The Gathering Field and I had gone up to the Clubhouse to make a record, and I can't remember if I was the one that turned Pittsburgh onto the Clubhouse, or was it you guys who turned me onto it?
No, I think that was right at the time that you may have gone up to Bearsville, right, with Bill? Is that where you
I was all over the Hudson Valley. We were in Pauling, New York, making some Gathering Field records, and I made the Seventh House records up there, and just a ton of the period. The Upper Hudson Valley from New York City was a great place to go settle down and make a record. Not do it in the city. So for those of you who don't know, Paul Antonell has a beautiful studio now it's in Rhinebeck now, gorgeous barn attached to a beautiful
New
studio.
York. Rhinebeck,
New York, on the Hudson River. Before that, he had a grist mill that was down on the actual Hudson River. You would walk out the parking lot, and there would be a train track there with freight trains that would fly by. The Amtrak trains would fly by in the middle of a record. But it was this Neve 8068 and a Studer recorder, Studer 24 track, and 800, I believe, A800. And then just like this odd building you'd walk through that was and I don't know what a grist mill is, but it was a grist mill at one time, and you would be up in the other side of the building and recording down in this control room on the other side. A really cool hang, and it just was a great sounding place. You guys went up there to work with Tim Bamba, evidently because the Gathering Field had been there. I'd taken the Gathering Field there, and it was just what was it like working with Tim Bamba? Was he one of the producers? Have you had a producer during the length of all the records that you've just been like, not a great fit, or were they all just great periods in time? Tell us about the Tim Bamba era.
I think everybody was a good fit at the time. Tim brought some elements that we never would have thought of for ourselves. He was a great, we were working 2-inch tape at that time. He was like a freaking surgeon in cutting tape and editing tape together. It was hilarious to watch him work. And most of the young people don't even know what we're talking about there, but he was fun to work with. And being in that studio, like you said, Joe, that was a fun studio to be in. Big barn. We'd never been in such an open environment like that. And to be able to take breaks, there was a nice breakfast room in there. And to go outside and watch the trains go by. At times you had to go out and when you were recording, you had to stop recording because you could still hear the rumble of the train go by the barn, and that would mess up some recordings from time to time. Great experience. It was our first time traveling away from home, staying in a hotel and not being distracted by what happens at home at that time, girlfriends.
Did that feel as romantic as it sounds? Like rock band from Pittsburgh goes to upstate New York to work in a Neve room. Neves are sort of a fabled console. Did your imagination did the expectation meet your imagination on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
The sounds were just like next level, not like, what you were getting on older records as kids in Pittsburgh.
Right. And for the most part back then, Pittsburgh producers and engineers knew what was happening around them in Pittsburgh. Whereas you go to a place like Bearsville or New York or LA, and those guys all know each other, and the world is bigger, and the opinions are bigger, and the technology is bigger just because guys are hanging out. And you know that in Nashville, if you want some advice on something, you go down to the Bagel Nosh and you run into another producer. Or Nashville. Is it the Nashville?
Nashville. Yeah, Nashville.
Nashville. And you run into somebody that you can talk to. So I think you get a little more worldly experience whenever you get out of town and experience that.
Was he your first experience with like a big time producer coming in?
Yeah.
And was that
Yeah.
an odd transition from being like four dudes making rock bands with maybe the help of the engineer or maybe a Pittsburgh producer, or to like step up to an LA producer like that? Was it odd?
I don't think we were ready to give up control of the songs at that point. We hadn't learned that aspect until the next record. So a lot of Tim's suggestions kind of got 4 thumbs down. And that's really not the spirit of it. You're supposed to learn from whatever the producer was, but we just weren't mature enough at that point to understand that. But I think he did a really nice job on the next record when we went down to Nashville. And I have to say,
with Justin
those
Ebank.
experiences, with Justin Ebank out in past Well, he was close to Franklin, I guess.
Yeah,
Leapers Fork area. That's when we had the first experiences of a producer producing and saying, no, you 4 guys are wrong. We're doing it this way. My name's on the record as the producer, and this is the way it's going to go. And his ideas were just magical. He's started out as a bass player. He taught me more about bass in 4 weeks than I had really learned in many years. And I loved every bit of that. He schooled all of us, and that's how we came up with the records that we made with him.
How many records did you make with Justin Ebank?
I think we did 3 with Justin. Yeah, we did 3
Oh, wow.
with Justin. Yeah.
And out of all the records, when you look back at 11, are there any ones that are just like, hey, if this was the one record I had to leave for somebody to hear of me, which one would it be?
The first, I think, is Let It Go. That was the one that I think Razor and Ty really pushed, got us to the next level. The first record with Justin, just some of our more classic tunes that people have to hear during a set are on that record. But
wow.
I think the latest record is also one of my favorites. But back historic records has to be Let It Go.
Out of all these producers, who, I know it's going to be different for everybody, but who was your favorite? Was it Justin Ebank? And of course, let's not keep. Sean McDonald has done a couple records for you as well, right?
Yeah. Sean's done some, and those records. And that's the fun part about working with different producers. And we always kind of said, okay, after we do 3 records or 2 records with someone, let's move on to somebody else, because there's a lot more to learn. And I think we've always come at it from a learning aspect, as opposed to, who we don't want to get bullied by, or who we don't want to, have a bad experience with, yada, yada, yada. And Sean put together records in a totally different way than Justin did, and how the last producer put together our last record. And he really digs in and tears the songs apart and really pushes for the hooks, the strong hooks, whether they're lyrical, whether they're melody hooks. And there was some magic that has come out of his studio as well.
Are we missing any other producers?
Dave Heidick at the Church Recording Studio did the last record, Madly in Love at the End of the World. So those 4 guys have been the primary producers.
So out of those 4, for you as the bass player and as one member of the band, which one would you say, oh man, that was my favorite? I
know they'll all probably end up watching this whenever I post it on Facebook. So I'm going to say that I'm going to give you the pussy answer. I'm going to give you they all threw an element at us that really helped define the project. But I think the going to, one of the top producers in the country right now is Justin. Going to a guy on that level was really intriguing to me.
Okay, cool.
I loved the way he worked, and I loved his sounds. We all may not be in agreement that they like what he ended up with sound-wise, and that changes with each producer. Everybody will say something different. Oh, I liked his drums better. Oh, I like the way he did bass better. But I think Justin threw something at us that we never had before, and that was a schooling on putting the songs together, and tightness and grooves, and just playing together as a band. And
you recorded that. Did he have his own tracking room, or did you use one of the Nashville studios to record it?
We went out to his place in Franklin, and he had a converted sort of, I guess it was probably the garage and a little office. that he tracked in initially. And then we went to the mansion, or it was the stone house.
The castle.
The castle.
Okay.
Yeah.
The castle.
That's a cool
mansion.
place.
Yeah, it was an old
so
Al
we went there.
Capone hangout.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that had a really cool vibe to it in itself. I enjoyed being at that studio too.
Awesome.
Well, it's interesting listening to you that it's like you like the band members, right?
Oh,
You got 35 years of the same dudes. You like the producers, which is tough because there's something to get pissed off at somebody about on every record. And it just seems like you like the record companies, and God knows nobody likes the record companies. You've got an outlook that is intrinsic in like correlated with a person that's like a happy person. It's like most people would look back at your career and they'd be able to find moments to say, hey, yeah, it's a pain in the ass to be in the van with these guys, or this producer was a dick, or the record companies, absconded with all of our money, and now we owe them all this money. I think perspective is really the biggest part of having a happy life, being able to get through it. And it sounds like, you're an amiable person that is genuinely looking for like the shiny side or the half full version of life, which is really a cool thing. More of a statement, I think, than a question, but it's really cool. I love to see people like that. I want to fill my life up with people that see the world like that rather than the other folks. There's something really cool about that.
We learned that from one another. If somebody would be down about the way they played a show, that 3 other people would come up and say, oh, it wasn't bad. That there's always somebody to kind of pick you up. And don't get me wrong, I like to present a shinier, happier version of the stories. The first record label with Way Cool probably didn't end on a good note. We did have financial issues at the end of that one, which we were able to work our way out of. Being with the guys this many years, we've had some really tough times together. But overall, now you get to 35 years, people say, how come you didn't make it big? And it's like, I just spent 35 years with the same 4 guys. And
yeah,
like, where can you say that you've been happy for 35 years making music of all things? My God.
It's everything.
And you guys did make it big. You were known on a national level, exploited at a national level, been able to sustain a record career of 35 years, and every record makes sense. And more than that, people get off their asses and come out to see you when you play in the thousands. I mean, can you say the same for crappy, massive band from the 80s, from the 70s, from the 90s? You guys have got something that it's like big is a relative term, and the people who don't know what the music business is, the same people who ask you if you've sold any of your songs, there's people that don't understand how it really works, is that you've been gifted 35 years of being productive and financially rewarded and applauded, whatever the verb sense of applause is, applauded for 35 years by thousands of people. That is success. That's huge success.
And doing what you like.
Yes, uncompromisingly.
We did a drive-in theater show not far from here, up in Butler, PA, and we hadn't been together really since March, and we had a blast being together. Like we missed each other, and we missed playing, and we missed the crowd. There were. From this point on, I will not take a show begrudgingly and say, oh, God, I'd just rather sit here at home instead of playing that show. When you realize that even entertainment can be fleeting and go away.
Yeah, true.
I think over the past 5 years or so, we've had more fun playing together than we ever had.
Well, dude, cool. I can say it's cool that you'll admit to like having some down times, but I think it's more the perspective that you have, which is something we should all, like, I look at folks and I try to imagine what I want to steal from them, and from you, it's like, man, you guys are smart. You guys have done the right thing, and you've been able to be successful for 35 years and see a glass half full the whole time. So I wish that kind of success on everybody. That's the kind of success I'd wish on my son, rather than having some moment that he's in Guns N' Roses for 2 years and then in rehab for the next 20. So you've done it right. And the whole reason, the Clarks are huge. So an honor to have you on, being a member of the Clarks. But above and beyond that, I think that you're the real story that is the unicorn story here, is that you're able to do it and continue to do it and be profitable and sort of beat the odds on how the system, how the business is run. You guys have done it in a way that I just really admire. So congratulations on that.
Well, thanks, Joe. Thanks, Mike. I one last thing. When we're done here, I'm going to go back to filling out my unemployment claim, by the way. It's not
amazing.
all shine and happy.
Yeah, that's right.
So theclarksonline.com, is that the website?
Correct.
Okay, the Clarks, I guess Dick Clark had the clarks.com. So theclarksonline.com.
We got in trouble for that once, but that's a whole nother program.
So, and do you have a personal way to get a hold of you if you want to? Is there anything else you want to promote? Do you have Facebook, Instagram, any of that, or just a personal website or anything?
My personal website is gregjosephmusic.com, but I'm on Facebook as Greg Joseph. If anybody wants to ask any questions, I'm happy to answer questions. Spend a lot of time in the Pittsburgh area answering questions for bands, so I'm happy to do it.
I was lucky enough to come up to Point Park and speak to their music school, I guess, right? Music business school.
Entertainment management program, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just great to see. And you're a professor down there, so doing great things. And it's really great to be able to give back and tell the next generation sort of like maybe what they can expect and what the reality of the world looks like. You're a great person for that. They're lucky to have you. So we're going to point people down in the description. We'll point them to your Facebook page and some other, wherever, you can text me, whatever you'd want publicized, and we'll make sure we get folks pointed looking at you. We didn't get to talk about your solo record, which I saw on Wikipedia, but we'll do that next time.
Sounds good.
Thank you, buddy, for coming and sharing, being so transparent, sharing all your knowledge with us. We appreciate it. Signing off from the West Barn, it's Joe West and Mike Shimshack. We'll see you next time.